I'm going to give a little talk today about what I've been up to for the last couple of years, and in particular a startup that I actually officially has been incorporated as of about 2 weeks ago. So this is fairly new things as well. But a little bit of background about me before I kind of launch into what I'm up to now. I've been hacking on phones since 2001 when I joined the MIT Wearable Computing Group. And in 2005, when I got my doctorate on kind of basically applying AI algorithms to data collected from phones, I wanted to basically start thinking about applications that really affect people's lives. I mean, I played around with creating a little mobile app that helped socially awkward singles in Manhattan connect with each other. But I figured that there's something more there. And what was happening, the applications that were affecting people's lives, I mean, it wasn't happening in the States or in Finland or Korea, but in 2005, we were just starting to see this happen in Africa. And so I moved there, and I've been living and working in East Africa since 2006. And I was lucky enough to hold on to a research scientist position at MIT. But instead of having my office in Cambridge, I lived in this small village called Kilifi out on the coast of Kenya. And I did a variety of things, ranging from working in the local district hospital to being a Fulbright professor at the University of Nairobi teaching mobile phone programming. And we launched a mobile phone programming curriculum in 2007, and it just spread like wildfire. It was really exciting. I mean, I started teaching it in not only Kenya, but then Rwanda and Uganda and Ethiopia, and spent a lot of last year actually training other computer science faculty across Africa how to program phones and introducing them to the curriculum. And now we've got this mobile phone programming curriculum in something like 13 computer science departments within 10 countries in sub-Saharan Africa. We've had literally thousands of computer science students in Africa go through this, and it's generated a lot of really exciting applications specifically for the African market, as well as quite a few startups based in Nairobi and Addis Ababa and elsewhere. And one of those startups is TextEagle. It's the one that I'm going to be talking about. And what TextEagle is basically in reality, it's an idea. It's the idea of being able to enable mobile phone subscribers to earn small amounts of money by completing simple tasks for corporations who pay them either in airtime or actual mobile money. And to pull something like this off, you really need to work very closely with the operators. And I've gotten the opportunity today. I have relationships with literally every mobile phone operator in East Africa, and literally dozens across the world. And my other job hat, I work at the Santa Fe Institute, and I study large-scale complex social systems. And looking at behavior from CDR, call data records from these operators, and using this data to not only help the operators understand their subscriber base better, but also to better inform computational epidemiological models, to be able to help the city planners in Kigali, the capital of Rwanda, better design their cities based on information about how we're seeing Kigali expand over time. This is a city that's actually tripled in size in the last 4 years. And so being able to start quantifying the dynamics of things like slums and helping them try to figure out where to put the next roads, where to put the next latrines. So that's kind of who I am and what I've been up to. Generally, when I start these talks, I want to make sure that we're all on the same page in terms of what we're talking about when we say mobile phones. Now, a lot of people don't know this, and if you don't take away anything else from this talk, I'd like to hammer home the point that, the majority of people, or actually the majority of mobile phone subscribers today live in the developing world, right? And the developing world is really where we're seeing a lot of the innovation. We have this preconceived notion of like the cell phone going hand in hand with the Western business executive. But there's far more, villagers living in the developing world using cell phones than every Western white-collar worker on Earth today. So this is their technology. The mobile phone really is something that is theirs. I mean, they represent the majority of the users, and at the end of the day, I mean, it's had a far greater impact on their lives than it has on ours. So it's an exciting, working on this stuff in Africa has been really exciting. I was in Nairobi last week, and it's amazing how things have changed since I moved there in 2006. I was walking out of my hotel, and literally some guy, as I was getting into a taxi, put a SIM card into my hand. They're giving away SIM cards. And the competition amongst the operators, back in 2006 was just starting to heat up, but now it is just an all-out war for market share. And it makes sense. Safaricom, the incumbent operator, is projected to see something like $1 billion in revenue this year. That's a huge amount of money for this particular region, and so it makes sense that these Western companies are trying to get a piece of the action now. And so companies like Safaricom, the incumbent operator in Kenya, they're trying their best to not become a commodity, to offer innovative services to keep the market share. And one such service that I just love is M-Pesa. What M-Pesa is, it enables subscribers to send and receive money using their phones. And this service has literally changed the lives of a lot of people in Kenya that I know about. But on a practical level, it's also really helped me out. Last week when I was going to the airport from Nairobi, leaving to come here, I didn't have to carry around some extra Kenyan shillings. I could actually pay for the cab ride with my mobile phone when I got to the airport. Now, I arrived in San Jose here late last night, and I took a taxi to the hotel, and there is absolutely no way here in the heart of Silicon Valley that I could pay for that cab ride with my mobile phone, right? Like there's, people arm wave a lot about this idea of the developing world leapfrogging the developed world. And despite all the hype, in some cases it is real and it is happening. Kenya really does have some mobile phone services that are many years beyond what we have right now. And that's the reason why I work there and the reason I've been living there. One of the things that I think is driving this to a large extent is in Nairobi, for example, you can go to a place called Cell Phone Alley, and you can pick out a case for your phone. You can pick out the keypad. You can literally watch them solder it together. You can get it in a box with a charger. So this is more or less what looks like a brand new unlocked GSM phone for under $15. Remember, in SIM cards and airtime, at least a small amount of airtime is more or less free. And so what this has done is this has created a user base that we wouldn't necessarily expect being kind of hardcore mobile phone users. The guys literally on the side of the road that you see digging ditches now have to have mobile phone in order to do that job. Day labor in many parts of Nairobi is organized via SMS. And one of the ironic things that I tend to not be able to get over is the fact that the applications on these phones that are in these guys' pockets who are digging ditches on the equator, the applications were designed by some guy in Finland suffering through a long, dark Scandinavian winter. This is a person who would probably be much more interested in trying to do Bluetooth sync to Microsoft Outlook than to provide information on these phones about current vegetable prices in local equatorial markets, right? So there's a real problem here. Like the people who are developing these applications for these low-end phones are very disconnected from the majority of people who actually use phones. So that's something that we're trying to address. And actually, what's also happening is that you're seeing people, in places like East Africa, starting to repurpose their phones. Just because the major corporations won't necessarily give them the applications they want, they're trying to do things their own way. I got the chance to meet with Michael Joseph recently, who is the CEO of Safaricom. And he told me this story about how there's currently a company in Kenya that's selling water pumps to rural areas. And what they're doing is that now they've completely changed their business model in the last couple of months. Instead of just selling hardware, what they do is they're basically a water vending machine. So they sell the water pump, but they also sell this little solar panel in a black box. And inside the black box, there's a phone. And so the new model now is that the villagers come up to the pump and they M-Pesa, they transfer money from their phones to the water pump. 20 shillings to get 20 liters of water. And what's really, in my opinion, brilliant about this idea is, everyone wins, right? So the villagers, they get this new water pump with no upfront capital. The water pump company based in Nairobi is now selling many, many more water pumps than they ever had before. And Michael Joseph, the CEO of Safaricom, loves this because now in many places in Kenya, you have to have a Safaricom SIM card in order to get water. So there's these interesting, very innovative models that are happening in places like Kenya that I found really exciting. And what I've been spending the last 3 years doing is trying to equip the computer science students across many countries in Africa with the skills they need to be able to start developing their own applications, to take advantage of the fact that there is such a ubiquity of these lower-end phones. And then with an eye towards research, to get them to start seeing how people are using these types of phones and finally tying it together. So being able to recognize market opportunities so that they can turn their projects into kind of viable commercial applications. And this is a program that's now scaled to 10 countries. And I ended up sitting in on an EPROM class at the University of Nairobi recently, taught by a former student of mine, a student that I taught back in 2006. And it was really, I have to tell you, he was able to engage the students and teach the material far better than I ever have. So it's pretty neat to kind of see this really take off. I could spend the rest of the talk talking about all the really innovative services and applications my students have developed. But I'm going to hit on one in particular that has recently been launched in Rwanda. A former student of mine, Jeff Gasana, when he graduated from Kigali Institute of Science and Technology, KIST, it's kind of the MIT of Rwanda is what their informal slogan is. He wanted to do something involving the mobile phone space. And so he started this business called SMS Media. So SMS Media, basically, he's cranked out a lot of really innovative mobile phone, actually specifically SMS-based apps. But this latest one in particular really takes the cake. What he realized was that everyone, and if any of you guys have been to East Africa or Africa in general, you know that it's all kind of a prepaid market. So you see guys on the streets everywhere selling airtime scratch cards, right? People are very used to that. And what he realized was that more or less any commodity could be sold kind of with a scratch card. And he had connections to the Rwanda's electrical company, Electrogas. And so he started printing out his own scratch cards for electricity rather than just for airtime. And so using the same infrastructure, these thousands of entrepreneurs who are all over the country selling scratch cards for airtime, they're now selling scratch cards for electricity. And so instead of having to, basically for people who have electrified households, they have to go into the capital, stand in line at Electrogas, and wait to top up their account. Electricity is all prepaid in Rwanda. Instead of having to do that, people can now use scratch cards to top up their account. And he launched this service less than a year ago, and now 30% of Rwandans buy their electricity using their mobile phone. It's had a dramatic impact on that country, and it's it's pretty exciting. The last thing I want to talk about before I launch into Text Eagle is kind of what got us started on thinking about the idea in general. And I said I lived in this small village, Kilifi, on the coast of Kenya, and it really is a small place, but it's between the two major coastal towns in Kenya, Mombasa in the south and Malindi in the north. And I spent a lot of time working at the local district hospital there. And the problem, one of the issues with the hospital is that there was a lot of traffic accidents that happened along the Mombasa-Malindi road. And so they'd regularly run out of blood and blood supplies at the local blood bank at the hospital. And repeatedly, this happened, when I first got there, this happened almost every month. Someone would panicked approach me saying they need my specific type of blood, and it was an emergency, and so I would do this. And after several times this happened, and I have to kind of the caveat is that I hate needles, and after several times this happened, and my arms being all black and blue, out of my own self-interest, really more than anything else, started looking into what the deal was. Why did this hospital keep running out of blood? And it turned out that there just wasn't much communication between this rural hospital and the centralized blood bank in Mombasa. And so together with a student of mine, Eric Magatsu at the University of Nairobi, we created this system, this SMS blood bank system, that enabled the nurses in these rural hospitals to text in what the current blood levels are to our centralized server. And then Eric built this beautiful visualization of the different blood levels at these different hospitals to show to the people working in Mombasa. And I thought this was a very clever solution to this dilemma, and it turned out to be a total failure. It didn't work at all. The people in the central blood repositories, they were interested, they were logging in, but the nurses simply weren't putting the real-time data online. And the reason was because they didn't want to pay for the text message. I mean, a text message in Kenya, when you're working and getting paid by a local hospital, is a substantial fraction of your day's wage. And so with just 15 lines of code, we modified the system. We basically just said that, for every day that we get a properly formatted text message about the blood levels, we would send 15 cents of airtime to the nurse that gave us this information. With those 15 lines of code basically turned this into a system that was originally a complete failure into something that's now under review by the Kenyan Ministry of Health to deploy nationwide. I mean, once the nurses began to get compensated for the information that they were telling us, suddenly a switch flipped. And everyone wanted to participate in the system. Everyone wanted to talk about what their blood levels were. And the hope is now that this is something that is currently saving lives. I mean, it's these emergencies on the local district level have at least gone down. So that's really exciting, and that really kind of got us thinking about what other types of tasks can we enable people to do. I mean, clearly there's this opportunity here. People can do work, on their phone, earning money and airtime. Besides giving us information about the blood levels at the hospital, what other things can we get them to do? And so that's the core idea of this particular company, TextEagle. And backing up, I think there really is kind of a combination of opportunities here. When I first moved to Kilifi, and this is coming from Boston, where we are home of the insane drivers who cut you off to save a quarter of a second. Coming into a rural village in Africa, there was just a striking, this striking difference in terms of how people viewed time. I mean, people seemed to be extremely happy, or at least not really upset about standing in line for hours on end trying to open up a bank account. And as I'm standing behind them, or standing in that line, besides kind of fuming about having to wait so long in line, I ended up just starting to watch people. And I've seen the very best players of Snake, that little game on these old school Nokias, standing in line at the bank. I mean, this is something that just people get used to, and if people have a phone, they'll, just hang out and start playing around with their phone. So there's an opportunity there, and also the fact that in Kenya in particular, it's an English-speaking country, it's relatively educated, you've got over 75% literacy rates, you've got a huge number of mobile phone subscribers. I mean, it's tripled, actually, since I moved there in 2006. And yet half the country or almost half, is unemployed. Now, looking beyond Kenya, we're looking at, well over 1 billion, perhaps close to 2 billion literate mobile phone subscribers in the developing world, many of whom are basically could really use an extra $1 or $2 a day. And the third part of this opportunity is this kind of the crowdsourcing idea, right? There are corporations that are inundated with tasks that humans simply can do better than computers. Whether that's looking at the sentiment of a blog posting, or translation tasks or transcription tasks. There's a bunch of these things out there. And then lastly, it's the operators. So like I said in the beginning, I've worked with more or less every mobile phone operator in East Africa. And every time I sit down with at least the higher level executives, almost inevitably two things come up. Two problems that they're tearing their hair out about. And that's ARPU, average revenue per user. And ARPU is plummeting. It's plummeting across the board in Africa. And that should make sense to people, right? So the people who are buying phone, or who are becoming mobile phone subscribers this year, they're making less money than the people who became mobile phone subscribers last year in Kenya. And so if your subscriber base, if your subscriber is making $3 a day, no matter how good a service you can provide to that user, there's a real upper bound to how much he's going to be able to pay. And so across the board, you're seeing ARPU fall. And the other thing that the carriers are really concerned about is the fact that they've invested hundreds of millions of dollars in the infrastructure, laying out all sorts of very expensive towers and capacity, yet that the majority of time it's basically going underutilized, meaning there's only particular times in day, and in Kenya, and actually most of Africa, you see saturation just at dusk. People are using their phone quite often. But other than that, the capacity is, this basically you've just got some pipes that are not being used for anything. And so what the operators are trying to do is trying to figure out what other innovative ways can they monetize all this underutilized capacity. So hopefully you have a pretty good idea of what the opportunity is now, right? So you've got a bunch of people with a lot of idle time that are educated with mobile phones. You've got the corporations with a variety of different types of tasks that humans simply can do better than computers. And you've got these operators who are desperately trying to find both something that differentiates them from the competition now that's coming all over East Africa, but also how do you increase ARPU, average revenue per user, and how do you monetize this huge investment that they've already made? And that's what we're trying to do. I mean, we're basically connecting the dots here. We're enabling these tasks to be distributed and completed via mobile phones, hopefully around the world, at least right now around East Africa. And so you can think of this, I mean, people have told me to kind of initially explain this as a mobile mechanical Turk. But specifically, this is something really that I'm aiming at the developing world. And things are now really progressing rapidly. We've deployed now in Kenya. We've got a live service going on with Safaricom. We're ready to go with Viva in the Dominican Republic, and we'll be launching with MTN in Rwanda in about a month and a half. So this is real, and this is happening, and it's exciting. And I was told not to spend much time on the next two slides, but one of the really the interesting things about this, for me at least, is that there's a real fun math problem here. I mean, if you're asking people to do tasks, and we're getting payment from corporations but they want to pay for the right answer. How do you infer what the right answer is? It turns out that, I can go over this in detail afterwards, but you really don't need to ask many independent users the same question before you can get a 95% confidence interval that you've got the right answer. And that was one gratifying thing. And then you can actually start bootstrapping and being able to, at the same time as figuring out what the right answer is, start figuring out what the domain expertise is of your user base. So some individuals are going to give you all the right answers when you ask about translation questions, but maybe not so much about sentiment questions. So you can actually start at using something called expectation maximization. You can solve these equations at the same time, and it turns out to be quite an elegant solution that I won't talk about anymore. On to the types of tasks that we've got at the moment. So companies like Nokia, they're really interested in personalization, right? But you'd be lucky. You can sometimes find in Nairobi a phone that has a Kiswahili interface. But there's over 100 languages in Kenya. In the village that I was living in, everyone spoke Giriama. And then the second language was English, and maybe the third language was Kiswahili. Nokia would love to have a Giriama interface for their phone, but they have no idea what words like address book actually translate to. And so these were the first corpus of tasks that we had, was being able to start building up a dictionary of relevant words in all of these local languages. One of the business partners on this venture, who's based in Nairobi, started a company called Mobile Planet, which actually Google has become a minority shareholder of. which is their first investment in Africa, as far as I'm aware. So he started this value-added service provider who they do things like text message alerts, and he also sends, he basically creates a list of potential news events that he sells to Safaricom as news alerts, which are kind of a premium SMS service, and then compensates the reporters for generating those stories. What we're thinking about doing is also basically getting the tens of thousands of security guards that are on the streets at the moment in Nairobi and elsewhere, who generally see the news first, get them involved as people who can actually start reporting stories as they break. This is a photograph of one of our users who just completed a set of, the phone of one of our users who just completed a set of translation tasks. And they're receiving 30 shillings, which is about 50 cents. And I think that there's a real opportunity for rural banking services, for financial services and tools for people in very rural areas who don't necessarily have access to the traditional banking mechanisms. So what this individual could do is that he can cash this out at any post office in the country, as well as any M-Pesa agent. He can immediately turn it into airtime. But he also could start basically accumulating this money in his TextEagle account. And what's neat about that idea is that we can start introducing the concepts like interest, like earning interest, like savings bonds, and we don't have to be regulated like a bank. You really don't want to be a bank in East Africa due to, for a variety of complicated reasons, but mostly around regulation. So we can start introducing these services because we don't take deposits. We don't take people's money. We're a financial creditor. And as such, we can basically start dabbling with this, and then hopefully, as you accumulate savings, we've been talking with Equity Bank in Kenya to start being able to transfer. If an individual wants to set up a real savings account, we can start transferring the money that he's earned and set up an account on his behalf. But what happens if you can't afford to buy a phone, if you don't own a phone? This is a picture of Betty. She's a local entrepreneur. She lives about an hour outside of Kigali in Rwanda. She's a VPO. She's a village phone operator. And what she ended up doing was she took a loan out and bought a phone and an antenna, and she has a little kiosk here. And she's kind of the community's, in this village, she's the community payphone. So people come to her when they want to make a phone call. But just like the operators, Betty, for most of her time, her phone's not being used. It's just kind of downtime. And so what we're working with Grameen and MTN in Rwanda to allow entrepreneurs like Betty, there's over 10,000 now VPOs across that country. We're working with them to be able to allow Betty to offer another service. So when her phone's not being used, people can come up to the kiosk and they can actually start completing tasks. So we've set up a system with MTN Rwanda where one phone number is not tied to one user ID. You can have a lot of different users complete tasks and earn money on a single handset, which means that people now can start approaching your kiosk and using the phone to earn money, and she earns a fraction of the money that's earned by the TextEagle user. And you can think about what the ramifications are here. Right, this is now communities can start investing in handsets as not only a means of communication, of connectivity with the rest of the world, but also as an income generation device. One of the biggest tasks that we have at the moment in Kenya are things like market research and surveys. So there's a lot of money, generally from NGOs, who are spending on things like Land Rovers, driving out to rural areas and trying to do face-to-face interviews with a cross-section of individuals living in these areas. There's also companies like Coca-Cola trying to figure out what types of products these individuals want to buy and what resonate with particular demographics. We're able now to kind of shoot specific surveys and questionnaires at key regions of interest. Because we know the cell tower IDs, and we also know the reported locations of all of our users. And so we can hopefully provide that information in a much more cost-effective way. And then lastly, or one of the last things that we're doing now, is we're porting almost everything to USSD. For those of you who don't know what USSD is, you should learn about it because it's fantastic. It's very comparable to SMS. In fact, Wikipedia says that USSD is to SMS what Telnet is to email, right? So USSD is sessions-based. And just like SMS, it works on literally any of the 4 billion GSM handsets that are out there in the world today. But not only can you send and receive text messages via USSD, but you can also create menus and kind of have some persistence. And there's absolutely no latency. And most importantly, there's no perceived cost. When we were first doing this pilot, people were unwilling to initially just send that first response because a text message inherently costs something. Whereas when you buy airtime or when you check your balance, you use a USSD command in many of these regions. And in fact, there's more balance inquiries in Kenya than phone calls on a day-to-day basis because people want to be seen using their phone, but they don't want to pay anything. And so it's balance inquiry after balance inquiry. But what's cool, though, is that now instead of just checking your balance, you can actually start completing tasks. You can start filling out surveys. You can start translating words. So we're pushing virtually all of our services now to USSD. The other communication channel besides text that I haven't talked about yet is the obvious one, the voice channel. And we're in talks right now with MTN in Uganda to get some very, very, very off-peak airtime below 1 penny per minute, which means that we are now more or less competing with radio ads. So what we can do is, for people who are not necessarily literate, we can allow them to basically flash our asterisk box and during particular times of day, and then they can listen to advertisements. And I always get a little bit wary when I talk about this example to a Western audience because it's clearly an unsavory thing to at least the development community, getting a bunch of rural people in Africa to have to listen to advertisements on their phone. But you really need to kind of walk a couple miles in this guy's shoes or sandals. So when David runs out of airtime, he lives well over a one-day walk from the nearest scratch card retailer. And if he needs to make a critical call, he just needs to call for 30 seconds, instead of being isolated, what he can do is listen to some advertisements, start ranking them, and then he can make that 30-second call that he needs to make. As opposed to, think about it. I can't imagine there are many people in this room that would rather, spend a 2-day round-trip walk to make that 30-second call. Yeah, please. Right now, what we're doing is I'm sorry? Oh, so sorry. Yes, the relevant advertisements. So actually, the radio industry in Uganda, as well as all of East Africa, is a booming one. And there are major corporations who basically aggregate radio ads. And those ads are everything from selling tractors to selling Coca-Cola. It's a variety of different things. And what's neat about this system is that we can there's all this content that's already been created from these corporations who have made their radio ad and are selling it around radio stations in Uganda. Now we can actually give people much more targeted audio ads because you're starting to rank, is this relevant, is this not relevant, is this interesting, is this not interesting? Other audio tasks that we're looking at include a collaboration with Nokia on speech recognition training. So basically building it, I mentioned that there's these 100 languages in Kenya, for example. Not only do we want to have a transcription or translation of different English words into these other languages, but also we want to be able to start creating the next generation speech recognition technology, which involves a huge corpus of a lot of people saying a lot of different words in a lot of different languages. So that's another one, and then there's transcription. So being able to listen to some audio and then transcribe it. And the medical transcription business alone is almost a $15 billion industry now. And most of that money is going to, I believe, India and maybe the Philippines. But if we could even get 1% of those medical transcription tasks into a place like rural Kenya, we would increase the GDP of the country by almost double. So it's, that's another exciting thing to think about, at least. Like I said, I was just in Kenya a week ago. I spent the last 2 weeks there doing the launch of this particular service in conjunction with Mobile Planet. And the service is now live. I mean, we initially seeded this with a group of security guards across Nairobi, some taxi cab drivers in the city, and then high school students around the country. And it's exciting. I mean, it's really taken off. We've got a big corpus of lots and lots of words translated in over 15 languages in Kenya. And there's just been a huge response. We did not advertise this at all, and we had just exponential growth in terms of the number of users. People were telling their friends, and we're running out of tasks. But it's been a rewarding experience. I mean, this time last year, this was just kind of a vague idea about something that I thought would be kind of cool, and going to Nairobi and seeing people use it, and watching it affect their lives has been an amazing experience. So, in collaboration with a variety of really competent and extremely motivated organizations and individuals, we've done something that personally I'm really proud of. We've transformed the majority of mobile phones in East Africa into a platform that people can use to start doing work and earning money. And for me, I think that's awesome. But I'm here today with an ulterior motive in mind. I mean, I'm here today because I want something from you. We've got some of these translation tasks that I've showed you, and we've got some survey tasks. But there is just no way we can meet the demand that we're experiencing in Kenya at first, and especially as we scale this out. We need more tasks, and I'm the only Westerner involved in this project. And now that the system has been designed and the accuracy algorithms have been implemented and the service is now deployed, suddenly it's become my job to start drumming up tasks from Western companies. And I'm a horrible person to do that, but I'm hoping talks like this will help me. So that's more or less it. I mean, there's like the slide says, there's 15 million Africans that are ready to start working on their mobile phones, and while I can't pretend to know what kind of tasks people are going to be able to accomplish in the future to earn money using their mobile phones, I still have an absolute conviction that this type of idea is going to become an important source of supplemental income for a large fraction of people on Earth today. And with that, I'll stop and open it up for questions. Thanks.